Hey everybody, this is Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am joined by the military spouse, Megan Harless. How are you doing, Megan?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing as good as I can be. I am day one of sheltering in place here at my home office. Um, trying to figure out the new normal. What is your life like right now, just on a personal level? Being at home, I imagine, or what's going on with you?
Yeah, so we've been home. My three children are out of school, so we've been trying to navigate that new balance of teaching them at home with remote learning through Google Classroom and other forums, and just trying to find that balance together.
My kids aren't of school age yet. They'll be starting in September. But what are you being asked to do as a parent with kids, as far as like learning at home? And I mean, what does that look like?
So for my boys, it's a little easier. They're fourth grade and sixth grade, and so they have all of their stuff basically in their Google Classrooms that their teachers have uploaded a lot of curriculum for them. Each week it's new stuff that they have to just kind of go through and check off, videos they watch, worksheets they answer, kind of deal. But with my daughter right now, we have a packet of worksheets and information that was sent home. And so it's just kind of going through and teaching her how to count money right now was her thing in math, learning about some consonant blendings with reading and whatnot. And then there's a couple of videos that she watches and a couple of other apps that she does on the iPad to kind of help those processes that she's learning as well.
And do you have to use your own technology, or do they get technology at school for this, or how does that work?
So our schools, each student has, I believe from second grade up, they all have their own Chromebook. So my oldest was able to bring home his Chromebook. My middle child uses my computer, and then my daughter uses our iPad.
Okay. I always worry about kids that don't have technology at home. Also worry about kids that don't have lunch, at home. But hey, so if you're on LinkedIn, go ahead and let us know, where you're watching us from. Give your company a little shout out. Definitely going to recognize you. I'd love to also hear comments and questions for Megan, as well as we kind of talk through her role, her journey, some of the challenges from a military spouse, military family perspective with the moving program as it's presently constituted. Really am curious about her journey and how she kind of got into this, and then what that's been like and what she's learned from the process and what we can all learn from the process. So if you're with me on LinkedIn, go ahead and check in. I see some folks on Facebook, a lot of folks on Facebook chiming in as well. Go ahead and check in with us. We'll give a couple shout outs. Got some people jumping on right now. Oded Carmi says this will be a good one, probably because I set it up. Shout out to Oded for connecting Megan and I. Appreciate it. Oded takes 100% of the credit for us connecting. Hey, Oded, let's see. We got Jack Jampel jumping in. Hi, guys. Let's see here. Janet, I'm looking forward to this. Ben, you look adorable today. Thank you, Janet. I appreciate that. Oh, that's so nice. My first day working from home. This is kind of my little casual look. Got jeans on. Don't tell anybody. Tim Quirk, good day all. Hey, Tim, how you doing? Let's see here on LinkedIn. Carrie Stewart says, tags Lisa Holly. Georgia Engel says, hi, Ben and Megan. Looking forward to this discussion. Mark Muss, Love and Relo from Switzerland. So it's getting out there. That's kind of cool. Let's see here. Terry Head. Hi, Megan and Ben. Big thanks to you both. Hey, Terry. Do you know Terry? Megan, have you met Terry Head from IAM? Used to be the...
I believe so.
Super handsome.
The personal property forum in September, and I met so many people there. I'd probably recognize the face before I realized the name.
Yep. Katie Linehan from Connecticut checking in. David Murray from England checking in. Lori Moran from Beacons Moving Solutions. Hey, Lori. Christine Daly. Hi, Ben and Megan from Service Chicago. Hey, Christine. I love the bow tie. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Anthony Walmsley, also from Army Ants UK, England. So we got to a few people from across the pond checking in. Did you know when you came on today that you were going to have such a worldwide impact?
Not at all.
And where are you right now, Megan?
I am in Texas, in good old Texarkana, right on the border of Texas and Arkansas.
Love Texas. So I don't know if you know this, and not that this is really about me right now, but I was actually born in Texas. That's where I'm from.
Okay, that's cool.
Great state. Great state. Yeah. We got Steve Whittekamp checking in, watching live. He is the president of the California Movers Association. Sean Wood, hey, from Dubai, nice bow tie, Ben. Hey, Sean, how's it going? Terry had a face you won't forget, very handsome. All right, awesome. Well, we got some folks checking in. Keep them coming. We would love to answer your questions, hear your comments, give some more shout outs. Appreciate everybody checking in here. We're going to kind of hop into it. And, you know, Megan, as a mom, a spouse, a member of a military family who is impacted by COVID-19, like all of us, can you give us some perspective right now, since you are a resident military family moving expert? What are you hearing out there in the forums and the chat boards and from your community around the moving process as it stands today?
So a lot of families are kind of sitting in limbo. A lot of uncertainty out there about what is going on. Many are speculating that the stop move order is going to be extended, and we won't see our first big PCSs happening until July or even August. I said, families are speculating for that. Some are, hotel living right now. They got caught in the middle, and so their losing command doesn't want to let them go, but they don't have a house. They don't have their household goods. They'd rather get to the other end and get set up in some fashion. So there's just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of people sitting in limbo, a lot of families that have bought houses at their gating location expecting to move into them, in April, early May, and now they're wondering about, 2 mortgages, what they can do to kind of handle that.
Wow.
Trying to work through exception to policies to be able to get out.
So you've said so many things, and I just have so many questions right now. First, so everybody knows, there was a call yesterday regarding the military stop move order. It had been for May 11th, May 13th. They just extended it to May 24th or 25th, I believe.
And I believe, my understanding is that the extension is for CONUS movement only. That domestic movement should still be May 11th. From my understanding.
So, and so those of you who don't know, CONUS is outside the continental United States. CONUS is continental United States.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying this CONUS impacts the stop move is out further for CONUS moves. If anybody has heard differently or has different information, go ahead, leave it in the comments, just to clarify that. But now you're hearing people are speculating June, July is what you're hearing?
Yeah, a lot of families that they're saying, I'm supposed to move in May. They don't think they're going to be moving at the end of May or even in July. They think, it's not going to happen until July or August. They think the stop move will be extended and more families will be stuck waiting in limbo. Oh
my gosh. So now, let's go and talk a little bit more about some of these impacts and the way, what's happening to the families on the ground there. You're saying some are living in hotels. What types of things are being done by the services to provide some aid and some relief to those people that are living in hotels? Are they doing anything with allowances or anything like that at this time?
Yeah, so a lot of the services we're looking into how they could extend the lodging entitlements for those that are living in hotels, so it's not so much out of pocket. The only thing with entitlements is that you get those paid back on the opposite end when your move is done. So families are paying out of pocket now to be reimbursed later. I don't know about all of the services, but I know for Army specifically, they've offered a hardship duty pay for families that are kind of stuck in those limbo situations where they can get $100 a day and it only goes up to $1,500 a month to kind of help offset those lodging costs or second mortgages that they now have to pay on.
So now you said going back to the allowances, you're saying that they have to float this money up front. How long until they get reimbursed for that?
Usually it's on when they check into their next location and they finalize their paperwork. So in some cases you can request like an advance, but that's usually done before you start your move. And so like these families that have already started their move expected to be in a hotel for a few days before they were flying to Germany, or a few days before driving to California, are now stuck living there. And so I know, a lot of exception to policies are taking place right now. So they're reaching out to their commands, to the finance offices, and some of them are trying to do monthly reimbursements for things to kind of help float that money. But generally, it's unless you request that advance and your entitlements up front before your move, you don't get any of that money back until you're on the other end checking into your new location.
And to your point earlier, the other end might not be till June. And so now here we are in March. And so it could be April, May, June. It could be 2-3 months that you're floating that money. And gosh, I imagine, talk about hardship. That's a lot.
It is. Oh yeah.
Wow. I hope they get some relief on that. I got a couple folks checking in here. Jamie Massler, hi Ben and Megan from sunny, breezy Mississippi. Hey Jamie. Brad Willie, hey Ben. Brad Willie from Beacons Moving Solutions, sunny Sarasota, Florida. Brad Hamlin, another bow tie shout out. Appreciate you, Brad. Thank you so much. Got a question here. Actually, I'm gonna prioritize questions from the audience, because frankly, if I was an audience member, that's what I'd want to see. Vinny says hi. Hey, Vinny, how's it going? Odette has a question. Really interested in hearing whether GHC was the result Megan was hoping for when advocating for military families to receive a better moving services. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pause Odette, okay? Because Odette needs to be paused sometimes. We're going to pause him, okay? First, I'm going to back up and I'm going to ask a question. Set the table for us, Megan, okay? A couple of years ago, I'm sure you didn't imagine that you'd be here right now talking to me. How did you get involved in the military moving process? Tell me the story real quick, your journey here.
So it was kind of accidental. In a way, it wasn't really anything that I was going out looking for, hoping for, trying to do. It all started, I had wrote this open letter that many folks had seen, and it was turned into a petition. It's kind of just a general military family's grievance of the moving process, that we were tired of having the horror stories that had just seemed to be consistently happening during that time frame back. It was, I think, the August of 2018 is when it was posted. And so I had posted that open letter. Somebody had commented, said, hey, this would make a great petition. I posted changed it, posted it as a petition. It was on a Friday. I fully expected it to kind of just die off in internet land somewhere over the weekend. And that obviously did not happen. My husband was actually deployed at the time. He came home about 2 weeks later, and he was just like, what is this? I'm hearing about you being in military times and, getting a phone call from Congress and all this stuff. So it all kind of happened accidentally.
I'm just envisioning this. So your husband's away on deployment, and then he comes home and he's like, okay, it's great to see you, but can you catch me up here on what you've been up to? And then you're like, yeah, I kind of started a petition. And I
was like, oh, by the way, honey, I got to go to DC next week. It was a good fun time. But so after that petition kind of went viral, I had a defense fellow from Senator Tester's office that reached out to me, and he was just like, hey, let's talk about this and let's see what we can do to kind of help you with that. So I worked with him for a little bit. We got a couple of letters sent from the Senate and from the House to Transcom, asking, the questions of, what is going on? Why are many families having issues? Why are all these horror stories happening? What is going on with that?
And what were some of like the kind of the tenets of your petition? What were some of the elements that you were saying, hey, we need to fix this, and this? What were some of those things?
Better service in general. Just at the time, it seemed, coming out of 2018, if you remember, we had it seemed like a really rough season. We had a lot of horror stories coming, things broken, missing, storage, household goods in storage that were being auctioned. And then, the pictures that they were showing, one of them happened in the Hampton Roads area, and a picture for the auction showed one of the names of the household, one of the names of a family member on the box. And it was an active duty soldier in Germany. And he was just like, I'm supposed to be receiving my shipment, in 2 weeks. Why are you showing my boxes being part of an auction? And so it just seemed like there were a lot of rough stories that year. And for our own experience, we've had a lot of bad moves as well. So just, it was kind of a service in general type of thing. Better accountability of the moving companies is another piece. You know, we hear all the time, you know, well, we can issue letters of warning, letters of suspension. And it's just like, okay, but does that happen? And does that mean anything? Does that do anything? Like what, you know, for a family at the time that knows absolutely nothing about, you know, the reprimands that a company can receive, what does that mean? And then just transparency, being able to see that, you know, if you're telling me my company is going to be reprimanded, can I see it? Can I know that they are, instead of just getting lip service of that you're going to do it? And so those are kind of
you're hearing about this disciplinary action taking place, but you're not seeing a material difference in the service that you're getting every time you move, which is what, every 3 years or something? I mean,
so my family has moved 10 times in almost 15 years. And everything. So we average on about every 1.5 to 2 years for my family currently moving. And it's from my own experience, it seemed like every year, every time we moved, it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And so it felt like we had hit rock bottom. And, you know, I wrote this open letter, like I said, as a general military family's grievance to the process. You know, that we were just tired of continuing down the path that we were continuing, and we just wanted something to change, something to happen. And so writing that letter, my first goal at the time, really the only goal at the time, was to try to, you know, somebody that's in a position of being able to change things, to see it and to say, yeah, you know, families are upset. Let's try to do something about that. But after getting, you know, the call from Congress, and then a couple weeks later, getting a random phone call from somebody at Transcom saying, hey, what are you doing here? You know, it made me realize, you know, that this is an important thing, and it does impact nearly every service member across the board, regardless of your branch. You know, and that something did need to happen and did need to improve. And so for me, it kind of felt like a sense of responsibility of, you know, you got the attention that this thing needed. Let's kind of follow it through to make sure that changes do happen and that they are the good, positive changes that we need.
So you put this petition, this open letter turns into a petition on change.org. You get all these people calling you all of a sudden in this flurry of activity. You go, and do you testify at Congress, or did you go speak to Congress, or how did that work?
No, so I haven't testified with them. I've talked with several different senators' offices, usually through their defense fellows, their military liaison folks, some of their chief of staffs, just about what is going on, what a family experiences, and how we want to see change with it. And whatnot. And so me and a couple other spouses, we worked together with a couple offices of Congress and was able to get the language into the NDAA this year that had the GAO report for them to do, and then also to stand up the panel from the OSD, Office of Secretary of Defense, for them to oversee, to kind of look at the GHC contract and if that was the right path to kind of go down.
All right, you just threw a lot of acronyms at us, okay? Not all, some of us are just civilians out here, okay? You said the NDAA is
the National Defense Authorization Act. So that is the thing that every year kind of tells the military what they have to do from Congress, what they can do, some budgetary things I think get thrown in there. It's usually a very long document, and household goods piece is like usually this big in that entire thing.
Right. And so you got some traction there, and then the Office of Secretary of Defense, which kind of oversees the services and everything that's done from a policy standpoint, everything, they got involved with a working group or a panel. And then you also mentioned the GHC, which for those of you who've probably been watching the show, you're probably familiar, is the Global Household Goods Contract. And it's huge news, as the U.S. Transcom is currently in solicitation, actually, and should be awarding it theoretically next month. A sole source provider for household goods. It's a $2 billion plus contract, and it's a big deal. And I guess, you know, a lot of people might say that you were the one that sparked the change that led us to the Global Household Goods Contract, you know, and I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, some people would say that, you know, and now I think it's a good chance, actually. Let me go over here to my little questions over here, you know, there we go. Pull Odette out of the mothballs there. And let's go to Odette's question. Really interested in hearing whether GHC, Global Household Goods Contract, was the result that you were hoping for when advocating for military families to receive a better moving service.
So when I first heard about the GHC, at first it was like, like everybody else, what is this? And when it was first explained to me and a couple other spouses as to what it was like, okay, this might be a good change that might do something. But as we started digging into it and asking more questions and uncovering what it was, with it being a single source contract, as a military family, what's kind of happening in our community right now that many of you have probably seen on the news is that the privatized housing companies that run the military housing on base, is that the GHC sounded very similar to that we were putting all of our eggs in one basket for this one company to kind of run how they wanted to deal. And so as a military family, seeing how that has fallen apart and failed with housing, it was just, we don't want to have housing 2.0 with our household goods, and so we kept, discussing it, talking about it. We were able to get, different initiatives that were put into place for 2019 and for this year to kind of help improve a little bit, and, to try to push them like, hey, if these things helped improve last year, let's add a few more things this year, and maybe we don't need the GHC. So we want positive change, but looking at the GHC with how it's set up, it's not exactly the thing that we want. We don't want to have to go down the same road with the moving industry that we went down with the housing industry. And a big part of it.
What are some of your fears about the sole source? You keep kind of referencing the housing issue, but I mean, what are some of the specific fears that you might have about a sole source award?
So some of our fears are really, that we're going to get the poor service that we've had before, and there's going to be nothing we can do about it. And the answer when we question it is going to be like, well, we're in this contract, it's up to this company, but there'll be nothing that we can do about it. Like families.
Yeah, because before, and I'm just going to jump in here, because before you were complaining like, well, there's a letter of warning, but what does that even do? And well, you could theoretically suspend a carrier and say you're out of the mix for 6 months or whatever, and we're going to bring in, and all these other carriers are going to get business. And that was a threat. But I mean, yeah, if you hand it over to one master carrier and the toothpaste is out of the tube, and now if they're terrible, how do you put the toothpaste back in the tube?
Right.
You
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And how do you discipline them? Because there's it's not like you can pull it, because then who else is going to do it? I mean, it's a legitimate concern.
And so at the Transcom posture hearing, I think it was the end of last month, General Lyons said, we've seen what has happened with privatized housing, and we are taking lessons learned from that, and we're applying it to the GHC, to have better accountability and better transparency. But we've asked Transcom, and we have yet to see, what are those accountability measures going to be? What does that look like, so we know what to expect? Where's the transparency in it, that you keep tooting and saying that is going to be there and that we have? Where is it? And so we haven't seen any of that really. And I think if they would be more transparent with, what their lessons learned that they say that they have, with what the accountability measures they say are going to be, maybe we'll all have better warm and fuzzies about it. But until I see it, I think Transcom's going to hand it to this company, and they're going to run it, and they're going to be like, oh, our hands are tied, we can't do anything. It's going to be like, well.
And then they're going to say, well, this is what the service members wanted. They wanted change, so here's change. But it's like, but no, that's not the change we wanted. We wanted to be involved in it. Now here I am speaking for you, but it's like, but we wanted to maybe. But you have notes, right? I mean, so your point about like, what are the lessons learned? I mean, I think that's interesting. I'll say, well, you say you have lessons learned. Okay, well, what are they, and what are you doing to prevent that from happening in the future? And how is that part of the solicitation to say how, to say, hey, person that's bidding on this, companies that are bidding on this, how are you going to ensure A doesn't happen? How are you going to ensure B doesn't happen? I mean, how is that being incorporated into the solicitation? You mentioned housing, because I think that's probably nearest and dearest to a lot of service members, hearts. But when I look at this, my brain goes to the global POV contract, which is the personally owned vehicle contract, which is the car shipping contract. They sole sourced that a few years ago. Complete and utter disaster, in my opinion. Cars are getting lost all over the globe. They don't know where they are. The company that bid it was basically stood up for the purpose of winning this award and was ill-equipped to handle it. And of course, and they actually said, you know what? We don't want this award anymore, this contract anymore. They got called on the carpet for performance. They said, we don't want this contract anymore. And the government turned around and said, no, you have to. You have to. You bid it, you want it, you have to. And it's like, okay, do we want to be in that situation with household goods? And then I look at one other one, and this also came out of Transcom. And this is like specifically Transcom related sole source contracts pertaining to transportation. I look at the DTCI contract, the Defense Transportation Contracting Initiative, I believe it was called. And it basically was a sole source award to Menlo Logistics, which was a paper company or subsidiary of, I think, Conway at the time, and maybe UPS, or maybe UPS then Conway. But point being is, it was a tender that was created to try to funnel all the freight spend into one contract, get basically economies of scale, better purchasing power, or whatever, right? Well, they ended up doing like a much smaller percentage of the work than they thought. Initially, Transcom came out and said they saved $100 million, annually. And then there was a whistleblower suit that came out afterwards that said that some of these carriers, like Estes Freight Company, were actually charging air bills and when they were moving things via surface and defrauding the government. And then the GAO came out, the General Accounting Office.
Government Accountability Office.
Government Accountability Office. I know the acronyms. I don't know the word. Government Accountability. Thank you so much, Megan.
You're welcome.
Government Accountability Office came out, or no, maybe it was the Inspector General. Somebody came out and said, you know what, we have no faith in the numbers that were originally reported around the cost savings, and therefore we recommend that the DTCI be disbanded. So that's an abject failure. So now you've cited three, now between housing, autos, and freight, we've cited three sole source projects and contracts that the military has endeavored that have, in our opinions, just our opinions, been abject failures. And here we go doing number 4. And that's concerning to me as well.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, if they can be more transparent with what some of the accountability measures are and everything, maybe it'll give people more warm fuzzies. But, we had a call on Tuesday with Transcom. I had asked about the GHC in regards to the stop move. Is it, stopping the GHC from continuing, or is it going on? They said that's still going on its scheduled timeline, which means that a company will be awarded the contract next month. So whoever it is that gets the contract, I just ask, keep families in mind. I'd be happy to talk with them to help, be that liaison between them and the families if they need to, to try to share information, what issues happen when we transition, if it continues, and just to be that resource for them.
Well, that brings me to another question, Megan. I mean, so here, I'm a mover. We got a lot of movers watching this. Got a lot of relocation professionals out there as well that could probably learn from the feedback you're giving us. What are some of the things we need to be keeping in mind when we're handling your moves?
So as a military family, we don't have the ability to set down roots anywhere. Our life is so nomadic. We move every 12 to 36 months. And a lot of times we don't have a home where we can, keep our good furniture at, grandma's antiques until we're done with military life. A lot of young families, they don't have that ability. So everything that means anything to us is in our home, and we trust complete strangers to come in, to pack it up, to put it on a truck, and to move it across country or around the world or wherever our next location is. So for us, our roots, our memories, and everything is in our household goods. Because we don't have that ability to put down roots anywhere. For us, it's also a very stressful time because it's not just our kids transitioning to a new school, a new job for us, a new community, setting up a new support system, our spouses starting a new job wherever, but over the years it's become stressful, just the household goods piece, because of the experiences that we've had in the past. That we've had those bad experiences that have kind of tainted our view at the moving industry. We don't want to see you guys as the bad people, but through our experiences in the past, that's kind of the way the lenses work right now. So when we stop you and ask a question about, what does this damage code on our inventory mean because we can't read your handwriting, it's not us wanting to, poke you at all, but it's just for us to understand, because we can't read it, or we don't understand what all those codes might mean. When we ask about something that you may be doing or maybe packing something, it's not us trying to tell you how to do your job, but it's us saying, hey, in the past they packed it like that and it broke and we had it repaired. Can you add extra padding to it, to ensure it doesn't break this time? And so a lot of things based on our experiences. So
yeah, I do know, and I know because I've moved also probably 12 times in the last 15 years, most of which were not long distance moves, but many somewhere. And, I move people every single day. And when it's my move, it's a whole different ball game. And I realize how little empathy I have on a daily basis for all these customers who were moving everything they own, to your point. And for me, it's another file, and then it's my box spring, and it's my antiques, and it's my heirlooms, and it's my wife, and it's my kids. And all of a sudden, like, when it's for me, it's been a nice refresher every couple of years, because I get to oh wait, I need to get back in touch and realize that there's people and there's things that really matter. And it's not just, 60 cents a pound or $5 a pound or whatever, So that's a great reminder for us, Megan. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So now, you wrote this letter. Get that fly. You just get.
I know. Go away.
I had a mosquito coming through my window earlier. I see one right now.
My kids have been running in and out of the house, with it being so nice and warm in Texas. So I'm sure we've got other flies now as the doors open.
Season. Here, and we actually have a comment. We have a comment here. I'm gonna. Vinny says, "Hi Megan, my sister-in-law is in the Air Force, and they were scheduled to PCS from Hawaii to Colorado in May. The military suspended the household goods pack and load 2 days before the scheduled date. They are, quote, stuck in Hawaii until things normalize. Any idea of when that would be? This is a real issue for military families. FYI, my wife was a Navy nurse as well. Thanks for all you do." When can Vinny's family move, Megan?
Yeah, so
you get these questions all the time, right? People are like, "Megan, when can I move?"
I do, and all of the spouse groups and the two groups that I admin for and moderate, I get asked this all the time. Can I still have my household goods packed in April? And it's like, well, are you retiring? Are you separating? Is your spouse considered mission essential where they have to move? Do you have an exception to policy? If you fall into that group, then sure, you can still have your stuff packed in April, but it's going to sit in storage until, mid-May or the end of May, when it can finally get moved somewhere. So Hawaii and Alaska is a little weird. It's considered CONUS, so outside continental U.S., but they're still part of the U.S. I'm going to kill this fly. Sorry. Sorry, y'all. Joys of living in Texas. So they're considered non-continental U.S., but they're still part of the U.S. And so it's kind of a iffy situation as to, with them being considered OCONUS, do they move at the May 11th date or the May 25th date? I would honestly plan for the end of May. I've been trying to tell everybody, even if you're domestic, May 11th, everything gets turned back on. Don't expect to have your packers in your home May 12th because you were scheduled to be April 12th or April 1st or whatever. Expect some buffer and some delay there. So being in Hawaii, I would expect the earliest that you would be able to move really would be the end of May.
So I mean, that's Yeah, that's if it doesn't get pushed out any further. Vinny also shared bad experiences with moving companies and military. So true. On our military move from Italy to the U.S., our 20-foot container arrived in Virginia full of water. Oh my God. And it took us 6 months to get money from the van line and the Navy. Oh my gosh. Can't imagine. Gee, Vinny, that's terrible.
And I mean, with every industry, I know there are some good moving companies out there. I also know there are some bad moving companies out there. Just like, there's some good Walmart stores here and there are some bad Walmart stores here. I have a preferred Walmart that I go to. I have 3 near me. There's one that I go to because they have better cleaner, they're better service. So with every industry, I know we have our good apples and our bad apples, and it's always unfortunate that the experiences that people have with the bad apples is how they view the whole industry then.
Yeah. Also have a shout out to you, Megan, from my friend Ryan. Thank you for what you do and your husband's service. Stay healthy, y'all.
No, thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Megan. Let's see here. Got a here's a question from a household goods driver, actually. Stephen Meyer. How many problem-free moves has Megan had in her career? So you've moved 10 times. How many good ones?
We've moved 10 times, and I would say we've probably have only had about 2 to 3 good moves. I think back on our first moves before we had kids, or we only had 1 kid and we didn't have a lot of stuff. And that was, easy, not a lot of issues. And then our most recent move, which was last summer, moving from the Hampton Roads area to Texas, was a good move. And
well, by that time, if somebody sees Harless on the GBL, they're going to be ship shape. I tell you what.
Yeah.
You don't want to be named in the next change.org petition personally. Sorry, I gotta say it. I mean, you and flag officers, I'm sure they're looking for y'all. Yeah. Let's see here. Oh gosh, so Stephen, there you go. So Stephen, this is interesting, right? So Megan said 3 good moves out of 10. Okay. And that's 30%. And meanwhile, the current, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's going to be directionally correct. The current mean score for military moves currently, I want to say, is like 80 or 86 out of 100 right now. And granted, it's not 86% like percent of the time satisfied. It's it's a point system. But my point is, the average score for the program is very high. But when you talk to the military members themselves, they tell you that the experience is very poor.
So part of that, the customer service satisfaction survey that we fill out at the end of the move, not everybody fills that out. I think it's around 25 to 30%. Everybody that moves in a year actually fills out that survey. And part of it is that there's questions on that survey that ask about your claim. And so a lot of families, they don't want to fill the survey out until they're done with their claim. Well, their claim, they get silence from their company. Finally, at day 59, they hear something, they rebuttal, and then they have to wait another month before they hear anything. And so by the time somebody's claim is finalized, you're 6-7 months after you've arrived at your new location, you've forgotten all about that customer service satisfaction survey, or you're just too tired, you don't care, you're fed up with the process, that you just don't want to do anything else with it. So that's something that I've been trying to work hard, to remind families, like, hey, take the 2 seconds, fill it out, because it does mean something.
Well, and I'm gonna be honest and tell you what I've heard and what I've seen and what I've even know firsthand to be true. But there's also a lot of gamesmanship being played with these customer satisfaction scores, these CSS surveys. So you mentioned a claims process, right? Well, you don't want to fill it out until your claim's done, and now you forget about it. Well, if you had a great move, you'd have somebody calling you every day asking you to take a survey. Yeah. But since you had a claim, they're like, nah, we're not going to call Ms. Harless and ask her how our move went. And then so if you do have a good move, they're going to get you on the phone, and then they're going to transfer you to a call center and ask you to take a survey. And so that's a process called gating, right? And then, or score chasing, right? And this, I believe, has artificially inflated the scores that are going on right now. And those same scores that we see are what a lot of people are pointing to as rationale for not doing a GHC or global household goods contract, because the scores are higher than they've ever been. Well,
Right.
I think that the gamesmanship is as prominent and prolific as it's ever been. So I'm concerned that the data on the satisfaction is not there, because when we see how many people signed your petition, Megan?
Over 100,000.
Okay, 100,000 people think the system's jacked up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can't tell me that the mean score is an 85 and 100,000 people think the system's jacked up. How many moves are there a year, Megan?
Up to 400,000.
400,000.
Mm-hmm.
So 25% of the people think it's screwed up. So and then in the corporate side, 75% satisfaction rate is not acceptable. So my point, and one of the things that I would actually recommend, and I'm actually going to ask you, and we're going to actually have a little bit of a working group right now, but I'm going to ask you, what are some of the things you'd like to see improved? If you get to be queen for a day and write the new regulations, and if Transcom continues to hear you and hopefully doesn't just take the impetus to do a new contract and doesn't listen on how it's implemented, what are some of the pieces of feedback that you would give them specifically on things that they need to do? So
the first thing is change DPS. So DPS, it's the system that both the families and the agents have to use when we schedule our moves and file our claims through. It's a very old, outdated system. It's not user-friendly. You have to basically clear your day to spend all day trying to get into the system, because it'll time out on you. It'll have a network error. It'll just crash on you. And whatnot. So it's very not user-friendly at all. And so just having some new system in a way that's more user-friendly that we can do. And I know the military Transcom, they've been working on a new system for a couple of years, but from my understanding, they're only going to be using it now for PPMs, the procured moves for families to move themselves. I've been able to have a rundown demo of that system, and it looks amazing. It seems like it would be a much easier system for everybody to use. And so we've questioned a lot, why can we not get that rolled out, get that put in place? And whatnot. So that would be the first thing I would change. And
now you're saying change DPS from a military member user standpoint or from a mover standpoint?
Both, because I've heard from a lot of agents too that they hate working with DPS as well.
It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
And
frankly, everything about being a mover within the military moving system is absolutely brutal. I mean, you have to go to a notary just to get a login. I got to go to a notary, thumbprint. I got to send it off to IdenTrust in Salt Lake City. I got to spend a whole bunch of money. It takes weeks. Then I get it back, and then I got to load it on my laptop. And then this whole secure key stuff, and it's just absolutely absurd. The system doesn't work. It crashes all the time. And then you got to be like a computer science major just to understand how to navigate the thing. It's just it's incredibly terrible. And frankly, it's one of the reasons that so many military moving companies have their SCAT code managed by other companies, because frankly, to hire somebody just to navigate and work their DPS system is probably a $60,000, $70,000 a year job. And, really a coordinator should be able to do it. So sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, great points. That's exactly why DPS needs to be software changed into something that is more user-friendly for everybody, because with that, a big complaint that I hear, the claim section is that it doesn't send agents a notification when a claim gets inputted. And so a lot of times they don't know that a claim is there until a customer calls them or emails them for an update on their claim. And then they're like, oh yeah, let me go look at it for the first time. So things like that, just make it more.
Can I say one more thing? Can I say one more thing about DPS? This is how bad DPS is. DPS is so bad that 900 domestic moving companies that are in the program use a software called 100% of companies that are in the domestic moving program use a software called Easy DPS, just to make sense of DPS. It's an interface between DPS and them, just because they can't even deal with it. They pay extra money just to have a software so they don't have to deal with DPS. That's how bad it is.
Yeah.
100% companies do this.
Yeah. So change DPS, make it something better. The next thing is and I may make enemies with this, the scat code deal.
Oh God.
And please correct me if I misinterpret things wrong. So from my understanding, CFAC.
CFAC, Common Financial Administrative Control.
Yes, that. So with that and international shipments is that you can only have like one SCAC per market. Whereas domestically, I can own like 1,000 SCACs for like the same market, and basically control that market. And so it's one of those things, why do we, for the same process, have two different sets of standards in a way? So why can't we mirror them and make it the same to kind of do? And so with that, as a military family, as a customer, for us, what makes it very difficult is that when we receive our email from DPS with our assigned TSP, Transportation Service Provider, when we get that email, it'll say your assigned TSP is company A, and then you'll see that there's contact info for company B, which is the company that is managing the SCAC of company A. And then you see that there's a third company that's assigned as your origin agent, and then a fourth company assigned as your destination agent. So as a military family in their first, second, or third move, they have absolutely no idea who in the world they are supposed to call when they have an issue. Do I call company A or company B? They just don't know, and it's confusing. And I can tell you that when I got assigned, and for me, like I know some of this now, but when I got assigned my TSP last summer, and I went and I Googled them, it said that they had filed for bankruptcy and gone out of business. And so I'm sitting at home just like, well, this doesn't look good. Like
this is not a good start.
And thankfully ended up being a wonderful company that managed the SCAC, owned the SCAC for it, that took care of me, and everything, was good. But I mean, had I not been involved in this process, had I not had done the many moves we had before, if I was a brand new spouse and I was Googling my company, which many people do, and I see all the time, my company has horrible reviews. They've filed for bankruptcy. It says they went out of business. It says that they're not certified. They have all these reports from the Better Business Bureau. Who are these people moving me? So family, it's very confusing for a family. And so if it's any way to just make companies have one single SCAC for whatever, and that's how the moves get assigned. So when it says company A is your assigned TSP and here's their contact info, you know who it is. I mean, we understand we'll have the origin agent and the destination agent. We understand that subcontracting level, we get that, but it's, for a lot of families, it's confusing when you have so many companies listed on your email and you just don't know who you're supposed to call.
There's 800, 900 companies in the domestic, arena. They're probably managed and controlled by 500 or maybe less actual moving companies. And then there's a whole bunch of actual real deal moving companies that are hauling military shipments that might be an origin agent or a destination agent and a hauling agent that Megan just described, that don't have their own authority to get military shipments. But so they're doing all the work, but they're getting it from an intermediary that takes money out and provides, basically takes money out of the process. They also are the middleman for from a communication standpoint. A lot of confusion sets in. And then you have these SCAC codes, these contracts, if you will. And to Megan's point, the company could have went out of business, and in the going out of business or selling it off, they could have sold that contract as an asset to another moving company who kind of hoards these contracts, and they could have 5, 10, 20, 40 of them. They go to companies that then manage them. They might have 50, 100, 150 under management. And there's no transparency whatsoever in the process. And I don't think it's too much of an ask to say, I'd like to know who my moving company is. That's not too much.
And so we've asked that, to John and Dan from AMSA and IAM, is there a list somewhere that lists who owns what SCAC, so we can, try to play the matching game to figure it out, to understand it better. And with I guess the way that they're sold frequently or handed off and whatnot, is that it's too fluid to be able to have a solid list to know.
Transcom has a list, because as a SCAC, someone that owns a SCAC, I don't own it, my company owns a SCAC. We have to fill out all this paperwork. We have to talk about who the principals are. We have to put their social security numbers on paper. I mean, there is a thorough process. Transcom knows who owns all these SCACs. They could institute CFAC, which means institute the Common Financial Administrative Control requirement that companies do not have more than one SCAC. Because when you have 10 SCACs or 5 SCAC codes, you can do a ton of work with one, get a terrible score, that year, take another one that you didn't do any work with that you got perfect scores on, do a ton of work the next year, burn that one out, and just keep cycling them through.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the intention of the program.
Right.
So yeah, if you instituted that on the domestic side, just like you did on the international side, and then opened it up to more participants, to have more companies come in and actually have their own SCAC code, and actually operate it in their own name, and made DPS simpler so that they could actually work in the system without hiring additional staff. I think you're really onto something there.
Mm-hmm. Right? So those would be 2 big things. Other things I would change and improve in the system, not necessarily dealing with the moving industry, but so the PPMs, the personally procured moves, where a family moves themselves either by hiring their own company or renting a truck or pods or some other method. Right now, we only get reimbursed at 95% of what the government pays the company. And so we've been asking for the past year and a half, why can't a family be paid 100% of that? If we're doing the work and moving ourselves, why do we have to hold out that 5% from a family that's, taking that capacity, that shipment away from Transcom, so they don't have to worry about impacting the capacity and moving it themselves? So why can't we reward them with an extra 5% of that?
And have you got any response to that?
We'll look into it.
Yeah.
I ask them every month, like, hey, so how about that? So they know, I in a way, I kind of enjoy being on their side. I'll repeatedly ask those questions that they don't want to answer, don't have an answer for, just so they know, like, I'm not letting it go. Like, that's too easy of a fix to say, we'll give the families the extra 5%. The other big change I would make, and I know the moving industry does not like this at all, it deals with inconvenience claims and being paid out at a per diem rate or a flat rate payment. So going into effect this year in May, is that they kind of instituted some of that, where if I have an inconvenience claim to pay, that we can be paid at the service members per diem rate for just meals and incidentals up to 7 days without receipts. If our expenses are more than that, or we are more than 7 days and we have to save our receipts and turn them in, I would love to see it just go to a flat rate per diem. Just the service member full per diem to include lodging for the family. So that way it takes away a family having to negotiate with their company what they're being reimbursed for. I can have, 3 years ago could have had an experience where we had an inconvenience claim and the company allowed us to get the 12-piece pot and pan set, the full-size air mattress, the, whatever things. And then now having a different company saying, well, you can only get, the 5-piece pot and pan set, or the, only twin-size air mattresses. And so there's a lot of negotiation that families have to do when they have an inconvenience claim as to what is covered, what is not covered. The list says a pot and pan set. Well, how many pieces am I allowed? Does it have to be, the cheapest one? Can I get the nonstick one, that's easier? Can I get the one that includes the cooking utensils, or do I have to really buy those separately so they're listed on the receipt for you? There's just a lot of negotiation with that. And so I would love to see it, even if it's not the per diem rate, even if it was just a flat payment per day of something that would take away that negotiation piece that families have to do. That way it's flat across the board. There's no misunderstanding.
Yep.
You know exactly what you are going to get.
So on the in the corporate relocation space, and to some degree the COD space, we pay between $100 and $150 a day for delays. And to your point, it's very clear cut.
Yeah.
So could be a good thing to go to.
Yeah, and so Transcom had introduced to that this year in one of the drafts of the tender of service, and then it went to the industry for feedback, and an industry did not like it at all. They didn't want to have to pay.
No way, really?
And well, I think part of it was the way that it was written is that there wasn't clear guidance on it. So if you go overseas, you could have multiple shipments. You have your household goods shipment, your UAB, you could have your alcohol shipment, your storage shipment, so it's like, there was no criteria as to what constituted a necessity item within those shipments to if you would receive an inconvenience claim on that shipment, so like going CONUS to CONUS, you have all those different shipments. Well, if your alcohol shipment is late, the moving company doesn't need to pay you an inconvenience claim for that. But the way that the language was written is that the moving company would have. So a moving company could have been paying one family an inconvenience claim, on 3 different shipments, which I understand. Right. There should be some criteria that, and this is where having a good inventory would come in handy and be a necessity, because you could go off the inventory to say, well, the UAB shipment that's late, had their clothing and their linens and whatnot in it. Their household goods shipment that was late had their beds in it, so necessity items, we can pay the inconvenience claim for that. But it was very vague general language in there. And the moving companies pushed back on that they didn't want it that vague, because understandably, they don't want to have to pay for inconvenience claims. But I think if it could have been worded for the criteria, that it would have been a much better deal. So when they got the pushback, they changed it. So you get paid just the per diem rate for the service member only, just the meals and incidentals, 7 days without receipts. Or if that doesn't cover your expenses, you can save your receipts and submit for more.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Any other changes that come to mind that you'd like to propose?
I guess another big one, and again, not moving industry side, it would be something within either Transcom or the military claims offices, is having like a dedicated catastrophic loss team. We had several truck fires last summer that we saw. One of them happened to a family, and their TSP was a brand new agent into the program this year. And so when the truck fire happened, didn't really know what they were supposed to do, what they needed to do, because it was a government contract that, the military would take care of it. This family was kind of left out in the wind, fluttering on their own, trying to figure out, what's happening with my shipment. We've talked with Transcom about it a lot, and the military claims offices a lot about it. Just being able to have somebody that when a catastrophic loss does happen, they're there to kind of walk them through the process, so they're not figuring it out on their own.
No, it makes sense. Catastrophic are totally different. It's not about a few pots and pans. It's like, yeah, I get it. Couple of comments coming in. Steve Whitecamp, PPM, personally procured moves, is risk of engaging a rogue.
Yeah.
We get calls. Yeah, I mean, Steve brings up a great point, and I'll bring it up too. I'll echo that point. We are seeing such a proliferation right now of online moving brokers. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of Diddy moves traditionally have been kind of like, get a rental truck, get a container, whatever. But you do have the option of getting a full service mover if you can negotiate one for 95% of what the military would have paid to move you. But there's so many online moving brokers going on right now that if you were just to Google moving, or long distance moving or something like that, I think 50% to 2/3 are probably going to be unscrupulous online moving brokers. And, that's something also, frankly, we want to protect service members from as well. And once they go PPM, I mean, there really is no way to protect them because they're on their own at that point. Right. But, to your point, I mean, if they were going to spend 100%, why not give 100% to the service member? It's almost like a lump sum type of a program is what we call it on the corporate side. So Got another comment here. Gary Connerly, has been a few years since I met with a federal agency, but they exclusively used a fixed fee program for home sale. Gary's with a relocation company, so he's referring to the home sale program for federal agencies through GSA, I believe. That makes no sense financially. He says, I tried to educate the buyer, a 3-star at Fort Meade, but it went nowhere. Sometimes those 3 stars are too smart for their own good. I'm just going to say that. Got some more comments here. Great perspective. People are enjoying that. We did have a comment here from Janet Turner. I personally do not handle military moves. It seems a shame that a claim prevents a score. Perhaps the scoring should be based on a customer service handling attitude. The fact is, even a perfect move could have a claim. Yeah, and Janet, I don't think she's saying it prevents a score, but I think she's saying since the CSS score, since the customer satisfaction survey asks about how was your claim handled, military members sometimes put off filling that part out because they want to see how it was handled. And I think they think that that's their recourse also if it's not handled to their satisfaction. And in doing so, they often forget to frankly do one. And they're not reminded because they had a claim. So it doesn't prevent a claim, but a score from being had. It's just the way it is. Millmove.com, I think Tim was saying about the website that was user-friendly. Let's see if we got any other comments here because we are running short on time. But I do want to ask you, Jamie Master says, I want to say growing up as a Navy brat, these military families have to deal with not only the move, but the new socialization. My hat's off to you, Megan. It is really tough, and most citizens do not realize these hardships that military families go through. That's such a great point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, such a great point. Roy Ramirez, hello everyone from Many Moves in Broadview. James Feeney, hi from Clinton Township, Michigan. Victoria McCullough, hi Ben. Very interesting, as I don't know anything about military moves. Katie Lenahan did mention here, and I think this is regarding the housing allowances. Can't they do an advance that is categorized currently with IRS as an advance and then qualified as an actual expense? Katie Linehan, that's probably more government contracting versus true government, so apologies if not a great question. I think she's referring to how advances might be handled for housing.
For the entitlement, so it kind of varies depending on your branch of service how they do it. So generally, you can only request and then there's really 2 advances you can request. You can request an advanced DLA, dislocation allowance, which is supposed to help cover other non-reimbursable expenses that you may have, like cleaning service, for when you have to clear your house, or if you have to send a deposit for your rental or something on the other end. The dislocation allowance is there for that. You can also request a pay advance, so you can get I believe a 1-month pay advance. Also that you can request to kind of help offset some moving costs that you have. And then there's also the government travel card, which has some strict criteria on what it can be used for when you PCS. So you can request an advanced DLA and advance of your base pay to kind of help with the moving expenses for your housing. But with the situation a lot of people are in right now, they were expecting to be able to PCS as normal without issue. And so
Right.
if you don't request that advance, the 7 to 10 days before you leave, you're not getting it. And so the only way to be reimbursed then is when you file your paperwork at your new location, and then you get reimbursed all of the money. You get paid then.
But we're running out of time here, Megan. This has been really educational. What key things would you like to leave our audience with, our relocation and moving audience with? Thoughts?
I'd say a big one. I mean, like I said, a lot of our families, they look at the moving industry through a tainted lens of past experiences. And we know there's good companies and bad companies, but for us, when we ask questions, it's not because we're trying to tell you how to do your job. It might be to clarify what it is you're doing, to understand a process better. And then for us, I mean, we don't have the ability to put down roots anywhere. I mean, our roots are in our household goods. Our memories are in our household goods. And so when that table shows up broken in pieces, shattered, splintered wood, and we're crying on the driveway and wanting to yell at you, it's not because we can't just go get a new, I mean, yes, we can go get a new table, but that's the table that, all of my friends came and we had Thanksgiving dinner around when our husbands were deployed. It's the table where we invited the single soldiers to come have dinner with us so they wouldn't be stuck in the barracks during that time. So, it's our memories that are in our things, because we don't have the ability to leave in places or to put roots down anywhere. And so just when we move, when you show up at our homes, it's a very stressful time. It's an emotional time, and we're entrusting everything with a bunch of strangers, hoping that it shows up at the other end.
Yeah, I agree with you. I hear you, and I hope everybody else does as well. It sounds like you have some movers there right now, PCSing you against orders, by the way.
Coming back inside.
But I also want to talk to the folks that are watching this still, and folks from the moving industry that are watching this. I believe we can do better. I know our job is hard as well when 2/3 of people move in 1/3 of the year. But I think we also realize we can do better. I know we try really hard, but we have to also admit, I think, where we fall down. I think we have to admit where we could do better. I think we have to think outside the box and not try to necessarily protect ourselves from criticism, but listen and internalize that and come up with better methods and solutions. Otherwise, if we don't solve the problem, people are going to solve it for us. And I think that's where we find ourselves right now, is we haven't been listening for so long that things boil over and they come to a head. And here we find ourselves out, not in control, not in the room solving the problem, but on the outside looking in, wondering what's going to happen as our fate is decided for us. So I would encourage you all to have empathy, to listen to folks like Ms. Harless and other customers, to not brush them off as just, how some customers are, but to actually look at them and say, if that was my stuff, if that was my family, how would I feel? And let's do better. Because I think we have it in us, and I think if we don't, someone else will. So I'm going to leave us with that. And Megan, thank you so much for coming on the program today and taking time out of your busy day as a mom, as a wife, as an advocate. So thank you and as a home teacher, you wear all the hats. So thank you so much for taking the time, Megan. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Ben. I appreciate you wanting to be able to share the experience of what we experience with everybody, and to hear our side of the story too. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a very important side. I mean, it's and thank you, you and your family, for your service and your sacrifice as well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.